broadcast, and this Monday he had a conversation on the Africa Liberation Day, and he had a very good panel. If I am this time, I was unable to watch and really follow it as much as I did the other time. But African liberation is always an important topic to talk about. What does African liberation mean? What do you think would Africa's liberation mean on an issue like COVID? A liberated Africa. How would a liberated Africa tackle the issue of COVID?
Well, first of all, I think I'm very grateful for your reflection always on this program, about the program that I do. I think you are doing a very good synthesis, like trying to synthesize the whole idea of my program that I do bi-monthly, and then this important conversation we also initiated called COVID-19. I think to go straight to the point of saying how liberated are we vis-a-vis the COVID-19, that's a very interesting question, which I don't think it will be fair for me to answer without presently looking at the implications of this COVID-19 vaccine, or the lack of it, and vis-a-vis the Madagascar claims, that finally there are some herbs that can at least, or that has, the potential to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 symptoms. So I think, in a nutshell, we are still having problems with regard to getting COVID-19. Not only getting the cure, but having our people understand that COVID-19 is real, and that we should address the issue of denial. So that is for me, that's my point of debate, if I were to stretch this argument further about Africa and COVID-19.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much, Ibrahim. I think we should be thinking of. I think it will help if we think of liberation in every aspect of our life. Liberation vis-a-vis governance, liberation vis-a-vis just the economy, our social aspect, our culture, every aspect. Our liberation has effects on every aspect of our lives. And if you think of it broader, that perspective, I think it will help or work towards it, and safeguarding what we've got so far. Future. But anyway, we'll continue on today's topic, and today we'll start with Hassan, to give us an update. Hassan, we had Eid 2 days ago, Korite as we call it back home. I was following the little good. I must say I was impressed with, many people online were complaining about how the market was full before Eid, people going for the wanted, whether there was wanted, people going to the market to get stuff. But on Eid day, I saw almost across the country, people followed what the advice that they got from government and religious leaders and prayed Eid at home. What are your impressions?
So before I give a COVID update as at yesterday, 27th, 2020, yes, I also held similar observation. I think during the Eid day, the public has likely responded to the call by the government to pray at home. Although I saw reports of 2 or 3 imams holding congregational prayers in home, but apparently attracting large crowds resulted to the police going there to have a discussion. But prior to Eid, especially on the eve of Korite, it was crazy. I mean, the markets were full to the brim, and I think there were aerial pictures of the Serakunda market. If you see the number of people,
yeah.
I mean, jam-packed in that market, it's so scary.
It's scary.
So for public health experts, this is this is not very good. And
Yeah.
now everyone will be watching to see whether there will be an exponential or there will be surge in cases starting from next week going forward. I guess we will have to follow the update from the Minister of Health to see whether that large congregation of people during, the Eid prayer time, especially during the Eve, 2 or 3 days on the eve of the Korite Day, to see whether it will have any impact on the number of cases that are registered. So I think, yeah, but on the eve day itself, most people prayed at home, including myself. We had our small Eid prayer at home, which to the best of my knowledge is the first time. I understand that during 1981 attempted coup, there was also a similar thing in other parts of the country. But for me, I think this is the first time that Muslims were asked not to go out and celebrate Eid. So coming back to the updates, so I would start with the Gambia as at 27 May 2020 because I could not follow this update. There are total laboratory confirmed cases of 25. And out of this, we have 5 active cases. Active cases meaning those that are currently hospitalized, 19 recoveries, and 1 death. So Gambia, actually, we have few cases compared to the rest of West Africa. We have about 76% recovery rate, which is not bad. Some would argue that we have not still reached the number of tests per capita. I agree with that, and I hope the Ministry of Health would ramp up testing. So the youngest case that we've registered as a country, about 7-month-old child or baby, and then the oldest case, 2 years. Yes. So the good news is out of these numbers, we did not have any case that will require intensive care. So currently, there is nobody that require intensive care services, so which is a plus. Now coming back to Africa itself, Africa has registered over 123,000 cases, confirmed cases. And out of this, we have about 50,000 recoveries and 3,600 deaths, which correspond to about 40.7% recovery rate. So I single out South Africa being the highest case in Africa. They have over 25,000 cases, about 552 deaths as of yesterday. Senegal, I guess it's a country of interest to every Gambian because we share a border with Senegal, and everyone is worried about this cross-border movement of people. Senegal has registered about 3,253 cases. Out of this, 39 died, unfortunately. Media and about 1,686 recoveries. And they registered about 52% recovery rate. So globally, finally, the global update according to, so the update that I gave about the Gambia is, the source is Ministry of Health. The COVID update from Africa is from the Africa WHO Africa office. And then finally, according to Johns Hopkins University, which is monitoring the COVID-19 cases globally, about 5.6 million people are infected globally. And out of this, about 354,000 deaths. And the country with the highest number of cases is United States, which yesterday registered a landmark death of over 100,000. Brazil, which was way below the ladder, has experienced exponential rise in cases. Now they're the second highest COVID infected country with about 411,000 and over 25,000 deaths. So these are summaries of the COVID-19 infections globally, regionally, and nationally.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That gives us a clear update, a good update of how we have gone so far. We would come back later and talk more about testing, because I think there are some development and there are some concerns here and there. But last week we discussed about uh, COVID, the response in the Gambia, corruption allegations, and the report by Gambia participate. So this week we have Usman and Taslima. Usman is here as a procurement specialist who would help us in uh, providing us a professional perspective on some of the issues that we'll be discussing on there. Taslima will be sharing with us their report. The Gambia brought a report that I believe ignited a lot of conversation across the country, and it should definitely. But we would have Taslima tell us a bit about the report, the process they went through to come out with this report, what their major findings are, and based on that, if there are any recommendations that they have. Taslima, what do you have to share with us?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me. I'm pleased to be here. I was supposed to be joined by a colleague, but he has issues with his network. He's on the phone, so he is unable to join. But however, notwithstanding, I will speak on their behalf. I'm speaking in my capacity as a researcher who participated in this the research report that we published on the 7th May. And so the research was a 1-month research. We partnered with CEPRAS, the Center for Policy Research and Strategic Studies under the University of the Gambia, to conduct this research. And the research was looking into COVID-19 funds, funds that were earmarked to support in the fight against the deadly coronavirus in the Gambia. Most of us might be aware that the government of the Gambia had initially put aside $512 million, as a pledge to support the fight against COVID-19. Initially, that it was 12 million that was initially given before the president came to announce that they are giving out 500 million in addition. But in the initial stage, people were not notified as to the source of these funds and how did they come to get this amount, where it is coming from. This prompted us to come together to look into this through a campaign that we have. It's part of the organization Gambia participates activities that we do. We call it Follow the Money. It's a Pan-African campaign actually. So we try to track these public funds to see, to make sure or ensure that they are judiciously spent, and then also reliably inform the general public as to the sources, how much is spent, how much is left, where is it spent on. So we decided to conduct this, and then during the finding period, we reached out to the Ministry of Finance initially to hear from them as to the source of these funds. What are the processes that they took? Is it a loan, or is it coming from government coffers? If it's so, where exactly is it coming from? Is it coming from the national budget? What are the processes? We asked these questions to the Ministry of Finance, but it was to no avail. We could not engage the Ministry of Finance. We could not have a response to them. We went to the Ministry of Health because we are told that they gave monies to the Ministry of Health to spend these monies. We tried to get information we could not also get. However, we went out to reach out to the frontline officers who, we were told that these monies were supposed to support them through allowances and buying them PPEs, these protective equipments for them, especially those in the front line. So interestingly, there were shocking revelations. If you guys had the time to read the report, you realize that what the government reports to the National Assembly or to the general public is far less than as to what is the reality. So in the report, so the research actually looked into the millions of dollars that the Gambia government has received in combating the coronavirus pandemic. And then we also looked into how these monies were spent. And part of the activities that we did, what the report highlights, were out of the domestically sourced 512 million. We also looked into we found out that $160 million was already spent. And interestingly, as per what was out there, it was mentioned that these monies, people had the notion that these monies were spent on other equipments, especially in terms of quarantine payments and buying equipments like protective PPEs. Also, maybe they also paid for allowances. And then during our interactions, we had an interaction with the public health officials at the National Public Health Laboratory on the 13th of April. We had an interview with some of these health officials. Most of them denied the fact that they had received any allowance, and in fact, most of them are on strike because they felt, they are risking their life. They have not been compensated to do that, and they're not even protected with this. And then when we got those information, we felt the need to also go back again to engage the Ministry of Health, to get information from this. We could not still get information. We decided now to also go back, go out there to gather some of this information, because during our findings also we realized that monies were, according to reports that we've read from the CITRAP, that is the situation reports, and the Minister of Health's press releases, that they have spent monies on quarantine centers that they are built, especially in the region. They have also identified hospitals in the region that they are actually spent monies on. We went to those places to see firsthand, and if you look at the report also, you will realize, you come to see testimonies of some of these people who are also in those communities and also in these centers. We come to realize that, in fact, it is in the contrary, that the Ministry of Health said they have built quarantine centers, especially in the LRL region. There has not been any quarantine center. Shockingly, we realized there was a ward that was identified by the hospital to where they will be used, which will be used to, in case of any cases, they will be isolating patients there. In fact, it's one room and about 6 beds there, and they have not had, it's not even well ventilated. They don't have much, it's not even comfortable to keep someone there. So these were things that we highlighted in the report. We went all the way to Basse also, Jarasoma, Bansang. So these are similar things that have been also reported. And in terms of expenditures that has been spent, the report also found out that the World Bank also gave the Gambia an amount of 500,000, an equivalent of 500,000, that is $10,000. But what was not clear to the Gambian people was that, what are the conditionalities of those, the money? Is it a loan? Was it a grant? What are some of the terms that they put there? And during the research, we found out it came in as a form of a grant, but it was supposed, the Gambia government had previously applied for about $12 million to support the fight against COVID-19, but the request was in form of materials. So the World Bank actually approved $10 million, and Gambia government was supposed to add $2 million, and this was supposed to be sent to World Bank, and World Bank was supposed to purchase these equipment to be sent to the Gambia. And this was not initially clarified, and this has been also reported in our report. And we also found that on the April 22nd, $345,000, which is about 0.07% of the 512 million, was approved for payment of 69 health officials in Upper River region, where one COVID-19 case was, tested positive. And when we went to this hospital, we tried to find out whether this actually approved money is been also distributed among these health officials, and then also the equipment that they say they were going to buy, like PPEs, face masks, and detergents. Secondly, we found out, in fact, from the the OIC, the officer in charge of the hospital, told us that they have not received anything from the central government. In fact, he has been using his own money to buy detergent so that people entering the hospital can wash their hands, and they don't have an overhead thermometer to be able to test temperatures of people to know whether the person's temperature is high or not, to avoid contact with patients. So this is something that was very alarming, and then we felt we could, video this and get them speak, because sometimes we understand in research, evidence-based research is one, is key in terms of unraveling issues around corruption like this. So we had some of these people on camera. We also had the opportunity to also show some of these dilapidated places that are in dilapidated conditions, to show them on camera, to show people that these are the situations that it's in there, contrary to what government is possibly actually saying. In fact, the Minister of Finance, on his speech 2 weeks after our publication of our research findings, in fact, went to the National Assembly to, in fact, he himself, as his capacity as a minister, to talk, to ascertain some of these things that we have, highlighted in our report. This is just vindicating the things that we have found out. Minister also coming out to say there has been some things that have not been going right in that ministry. So it shows that there has been so much mismanagement of public funds. The funds are not judiciously utilized. The purpose for what it is meant for is not being met. So this is basically some of the things it highlights. And it also highlights some of the it shows also the cries of people within the communities. What do they feel about it, especially this sit-down lockdown thingy, how it's affecting their lives? How is it also, what is their opinion in terms of the hospital that they visit? It pretty much captures all this.
Yeah.
Maybe if you have any personal questions or any specific questions that you would like me to read, it's a detailed report, it's a 20-page report, well detailed and crafted. So, but you could ask anything that you feel that I have left out or is not clear for me to clarify. Available.
Thank you. That's I most thank you for that detailed, I'll say concise explanation of the report. You managed to summarize the most important parts of the report for us. It's interesting how the information we got in some of the things you mentioned, information we got from the minister as this is what has been done. You said you met people on the ground who said otherwise, which to me is showing, which to me is telling a lot. There is a huge gap. Where is the problem? Are we getting wrong information from the minister, or is there a gap between what is intended or planned to be done and what is done at the grassroots? Where is the problem? Do we have health officials on the ground or administrators in the system who are in between these two ends? So that is something that I found interesting. Usman,
yes.
So you've had Taslim. I don't know if you were able to read or browse through their report. He mentioned the fact that there are times when some of the work that was reported was done, for example, with isolation centers in the interior of the country. What has been reported from the ministry is different from what they met on the ground. What are you making out of this?
Good. Thank you, Samba. This could be as a result of coordination, lack of coordination. Okay, but also first to start with, I think when issues like this happen or pandemics like this, we are usually eager to develop plans to guide the process. But what we forget to do is to develop plans and policies that will pay attention to anti-corruption and governance. Understand? And that is, in the end, we end up having these problems whenever we have pandemics. In fact, not around the world, corruption is always on the rise. Okay, we've seen, neighboring countries during the Ebola, how funds that were earmarked for the Ebola pandemic then, was diverted, or where the funds were diverted to other personal, use also to by officials involved in those things, in the fight against the pandemic. So when we have pandemics like this, governments should start with having, policies, guidelines that will ensure that, there will be no room for corruption and funds will be used for, for what they have been allocated for. And, following the ministers, weekly press briefings, and of course, the report from Follow the Money and other institutions, it's clear, it's evident that, we have lack of coordination, okay, in the way the fight against COVID is handled, okay, by the ministry and its partners. I think that is one of the things. Maybe that is why the reports actually have many inconsistencies, because what is actually on the ground is not reported. Maybe the information, is not, there's a missing link somewhere. I think that needs to be improved on, okay? But then, looking at this whole thing, I think, there has been so many mistakes that have been done by, the level of government in not ensuring that transparency is mainstreamed, and integrity is mainstreamed in our plan, to defeat COVID. Especially when public funds are in use, we have to ensure that whatsoever is done is accounted for, okay? And, we can come up with reports that will indicate clearly how every penny has been used or has been spent. Understand? That will, that will assure, the public that things are being handled well, okay? And, in fact, those involved, in the work itself, would know that, yes, their efforts are being noticed and everything is going well. And, it will not create room for, room for rumors or slippages where someone could capitalize on and do things that are unethical.
Yes, so mainstreaming, if I'm getting you right here, mainstreaming control mechanisms, like having, if you have a pandemic or whatever it is, or a disaster situation, the response, the governance aspect of the response is as important as the technical aspect of where do we put quarantine centers, where do we have medicine, where do we have personnel. The
Yes.
governance of the process is equally important, because that way the funds would be judiciously spent, and we'll have the right reporting, the right data, the right information, and the good coordination that we need to get things done right. I would agree. I will agree with you, but I would also capitalize on having you here to help us a bit, Usman. You are in procurement and you've been there for almost a decade now, or maybe more. If people talk of uh, maladministration, mismanagement of funds, one of the institutions that people think of, is is public procurement. But I think procurement as a practice,
Yes.
in some field, came in to guard against this. Can you help us
Of
enlighten
course.
on that?
Yes, first, of course, looking at the Gambia for now, before I get to your question, the answer proper. When we should have started with getting guidelines, understand? We know we have the Public Procurement Act and the regulations, but then there are no clear guidelines on how to deal with procurements during emergency situations. So when emergency situations come, many people catalyze to use procurement methods that, of course, would be allowed by the, act, okay, and be used, they are legitimate, but there are no guidelines on how to guide the process. And, that will become an opportunity for corruption, or in fact, in the case of Gambia, most of the procurements are being done through, and most of them would be single source procurements. And we fail to develop framework agreements with suppliers that we would use at least to promote mini competition, even if not to a large scale, but that will just ensure that, we are able to achieve value for money in all what we do. Yes, coming to your question now, public procurement is supposed to be the solution, not the problem. But where is the problem? The problem is commitment from the leadership of institutions. Understand? Usually people say, okay, procurement is a center for corruption. Yes, I would not say no, but the problem in fact itself is beyond the actors themselves. It mainly has to do with the leadership of these institutions and government as a whole. Okay, because you look at the composition, the structure of public, the public procurement system in institutions, in our public institutions. you have the permanent secretary as the chairperson of the, the contest committee of each, or, as the accounting officer of, of a ministry or the health ministry, for example. So the procurement approach in that case would have very, limited opportunity in cases like this to be involved in things that are unethical. And to call these problems out, it has to do with the, the leaders of these institutions to ensure that everything goes the right way. They will have the final say. It is their responsibility to establish committees under them that would be responsible for procurements during issues like this, or even regular procurements, ongoing procurements in institutions, understand? And when, during this, these COVID times too, when we have that commitment from the single committee, institutions, it's very simple to deal with issues like this because we ensure that everything we do is correctly handled, understand? Procurement, transparency, probability, and fairness, understand? In all, in all the activities, ensure that goods and services are at work to be able to effectively take on COVID. But now, when the officials responsible, okay, do not pay heed to the rules and regulations, or in fact, okay, do not ensure there is transparency in the way the process is done, ensuring that we have committees that would, comprise of experts, understand, to manage the whole process from the beginning to the end, ensuring that transparency is given a priority, understand, a level playing ground to is organized, for all the players, and necessary stakeholders also are put in place. For example, having civic, society participation, okay, and also having other institutions, stakeholder participation to ensure that the process is transparent. That is the only way we can overcome processes like this. First, we need to ensure they have a good policy, centralizing procurement, of course, with a common piece of advice. That will be important. But again, we need to have cohesion, clear priorities, clear goals on what we need to achieve, and we need to have access to open data, even during and after the procurement process. For example, that's limit us about not having information, or talking to other officials and not getting the exact information that is, or when the process is ongoing, it should open for everybody to know what is happening. Okay, that will discourage people from being involved in, in practices that will undermine the procurement proceedings, because they know everything will be open, they have access to information. Okay, and that when people know they have access to information, they will be discouraged to participate in things that are wrong. Public procurement is a solution.
Usman, you are breaking. You are breaking, Usman.
Is to ensure that value for money is achieved in all procurement. And how do you ensure that this? Understand with emergencies, it is difficult to conduct procurement processes because of the emergency situation. But not also ignoring the competition aspect of it, element of it may also be energy for corruption. So we should strongly dissuade or discourage offices from using single source processes to acquire goods or services, because that is where corruption mainly occurs. When we have framework agreements with suppliers, we have 5 or 10 and write them and they send their bids, evaluate them openly. Okay, the best among them wins. That will minimize any opportunity of prices being inflated. Okay, I was talking to some health officials and they told me how, in fact, some of these health products, some of them that are procured inflated price-wise. This is because most of them have been single source to a particular supplier. A very single source to the party, he has every opportunity. He determines the competition. There's no competition at all. He determines terms that you don't have bargaining power. Because it is urgent, you think this is an extraordinary activity, I have to accept whatsoever terms are being given. Again, even if that is not the case too, some people, unethical officials also may think, okay, this is an opportunity for me to get what exactly I want. Understand? And this, this is how procurement will come into play. But then the way forward is to ensure that we promote competition, even if not in large scale, understand, and also involve civil society organizations and other stakeholders to promote transparency, understand, and the, those in authority, accounting officers of these institutions, must ensure that they, they take up their responsibility, and ensure the guidelines are well followed. Of course, we may not have legal guidelines to follow, we only have to look at the act and regulations. Okay, if you just tell you, yes, you can use this method, but there are no guidelines that will dictate on how you are supposed to do things. But they must ensure that, the 5 rights of procurement are, must be achieved. The procurement principles must be observed, during this, during the procurement process.
Thank you, Usman. So to add on to the issue you spoke about, having a governance plan, we should have guidelines that guide public procurement in emergency situations, if I get you right. That would
Yes, of course.
create some level of the possible level of competition that we need to get us quality, the best value for our resources that we are investing in. At this point, Usman, I would come back to you later. I want to invite Asan to join us. Asan, you've had both uh, Hassan and then Ibrahim. Hassan, you've had both Taslima with the report and Usman's contribution on what he believes should be done with regards to guidelines and the governance aspect of our response to crisis situations. What's your reaction to these two?
Okay, thank you. I want to thank Gambia participants for doing a tremendous job. I also read the report. I like the fact that they've also given the different actors the opportunity to react to their findings, which is a best practice. Osman raised one important thing, which is about coordination. But I look at it from the governance perspective. Prior to COVID-19, I think few years back, there was this Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Fortunately, Gambia was not hit, but during that period, the government of the Gambia, through the Ministry of Health, developed a national emergency preparedness and response plan. And I was part of this process. So this plan is very comprehensive, it's very detailed. It looks at different components of the response. The idea behind it is to prepare the country to respond to all kinds of emergencies. Mm-hmm. So looking at that plan, it has different components. It has the coordination component, which includes the governance. It has a surveillance component, social mobilization and community engagement. There's logistics and safety, and there's also case management. This current COVID-19 response plan that was developed to respond to the COVID situation was largely extracted from that national comprehensive plan. Mm-hmm. Last week, my colleague Yaya mentioned that Gambians are very good at developing plans. We're very good at developing good plans. We post them, but when it comes to implementation, we have a challenge. So this COVID-19, to respond to Taslima also, and let me also say a disclaimer that I'm not speaking for the Ministry of Health. I'm not holding brief for them. This is just my personal opinion as a citizen. The COVID response plan is well costed. I think it cost about $12 million. He also mentioned that they've been tracking funds at central level, regional, up to facility level. And I'm not sure, maybe perhaps he can react to that, whether they've also been to communities to see whether the situation the flow of funds has reached the beneficiary. I think I heard him mention him visiting some, in quote, COVID isolation centers. I'm not sure whether this refers to health facilities or at the community level, yeah, but he can respond to that. So coming back to that, he also talked about the World Bank giving the Minister of Health about $10,000 US. No, it's not $10,000 US. It's about $10 million US, which was a grant, 100% grant. So later you can react to this, Taslima. I also want to find out if you've engaged the World Bank. The World Bank has a country office in the Gambia, and they've provided a substantial amount to the COVID response, about $10 million US. Did you, after your findings, did you also contact the World Bank country office to find out what the solutions are? So coming back to the overall discussion, we have a coordination issue. This has been raised by Usman some time back. And I tend to agree with him largely. You know, if you have a weak governance system in place, there is a potential for some of these alleged corrupt practices to take center stage. So for me, I think what the government should do is learn from this. This has happened. And I hope they will also take action. In fact, today I read in the papers, I think Standard, that the Minister of Finance was quoted as saying that there's currently an ongoing audit exercise. So he said government can only respond to the allegations, as he rightly put it, these are alleged corrupt practices, when the audit exercise is completed. So I think that's a first step. We hope that after this audit exercise, it will not gather dust like all previous audit exercise that we have done, so that they can set a good example to serve as a deterrent to public officials. Gambia is a resource-constrained country. The little resources that we have, we need to judiciously utilize them. So I think I should thank Gambia participants and all other civil society organizations who are holding public officials accountable. And I think this is the way to go. So essentially, these are a few of the things that I want to say as regard the governance aspect. And lastly, before I allow others to come in, I spoke about the procurement system. I think the whole procurement architecture needs to change. And I think Usman agreed with me the other time that we need to move towards e-procurement. I mean, all over the world now, it's very difficult for you to directly, steal or divert public funds for personal use. Most of these corrupt practices are through procurement practices. And I have a problem with single sourcing. I know during emergencies, ministries, fund holders like the permanent secretaries are giving some leeway to kind of single source procurement processes so that they can fast track whatever needs to be done. But that whole governance around procurement, especially the single sourcing, I think we should get rid of that. It's not healthy. It's not good. It's not a good practice. It opens up opportunities for people to divert or get kickbacks from this contract. So I think I'll stop here for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hassan. Ibrahim, Hassan mentioned the fact, I'll react to some of those things later, but Hassan mentioned the fact that the finance minister mentioned the fact that there is an audit exercise that is going on. It is after that audit exercise that they would respond to us. What do you think with the history of audits and commissions? What do you think? Is there any hope from that process?
Well, thank you very much. I'm actually learning a lot, and I've been paying particular attention to this procurement specialist and the Gambia participate latest research. It's interesting for such an institution to go the extra mile to find out how public funds are spent and how procurement is done, the transparency aspect of it, and all that is essential for the general public to know and to also critique it constructively as we are doing now. Moving on to this point further, is this issue lingering questions that I have with regard to the Gambia participate engagement, that if money that were earmarked for the COVID-19 were spent, how comes the public media or the private media enjoys some advertisement like information on COVID prevention, and also correct me if I am wrong or if I am derailing from the whole gamut of COVID-19 expenditure or the money that was earmarked for COVID-19. And also, what about the issue of education, like this distant learning, so-called distant learning from via TV? How effective is it? Whether those funds were also spent in education? The reason why I'm asking is, if you look at like the participatory aspect of what this Gambia participant is doing with regard to trying to hold public officials accountable on where the money is spent or where it is going to be spent, they went around the country. I'm concerned about the participation of the grassroots or the local people. How comes there is still the large bulk of denial is coming from the rural Gambia, that it doesn't exist, COVID-19 doesn't exist? Then what is wrong with that? Did they find out what is wrong? Did they talk to the people, apart from just finding out whether essential things like PPEs were brought in at the right time? And I'm just interested in that whole gamut of trying to, get to the people, far-flung areas where those people don't have access to even TV, radio, or social media. Because when you are talking to the Gambia, you address Gambians via the social media. Know that there is a segment of Gambians that you will not target, that you are not targeting, rather. That those people are not going to understand your message, because if you go to my village, for instance, or go to neighboring villages around Basse, where network, even communication network, GSM is a problem and still continues to be a problem. How are those people going to understand it? So those are my, sticking points that I really wanted address, and I still want to thank Gambia participate for the engagement they are doing, and trying to help us understand, where the money is being spent, or where they are intending to spend the money. And also thank Usman So, also the specialist he is on procurement, and Asan, yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Balde. Taslima, if you can comment there, Ibrahim asked a question. I don't know how I don't know if this was within the scope of your research, but it has very good question. Were you just following the money to see where the money went, or were you looking at the whole COVID response? So if you were, what were the people?
Yeah.
What did you see, or what are your findings with the people and their response, their understanding, or their denial of COVID existence across the country or in the places you visited?
So so the scope of the research initially was looking at the availability of PPEs, and of course how is the response process going. The responders, compensated as it was reported. This was mainly our research. However, we want further to engage, locals, especially in the regions, to hear firsthand from them. What are their opinions? What are their thoughts? I just sent in the chat, in the chat, that a link to our video documentary, that you could see some of these concerns, or some of these thoughts from people. And we do not basically focus on whether they believe in the virus or they do not believe in the virus, but we also look at how has it affected their lives. What is their take in the whole scenario? Some of them will talk about. You can see some of them talk about they don't even believe this whole virus exists. And it's just shutting down all businesses, and their livelihoods are all shut down. They are not even being able to stay home, so they have to risk it to go and sell whatever they are supposed to sell just to make a living. But to respond to that, we've not had a specific focus on trying to get this, but the main focus was to try to unravel potential corruption that might happen amidst the funds that are coming in. We not only rely on the 500 million that the government pledged, but of course also other donor funds that are locally mobilized, but of course also those internationally that are also coming. So that's our main. That's what we were looking at when during the research.
Hassan asked a question. You reach out to the World Bank information for that. And Hassan, did you have another question on that too?
So about the World Bank, interestingly, in fact, they reached out. We did not reach out to World Bank. What we did during the scope of the research is we visited their website to get information. In fact, that is where we got the information about the grant and the purpose of the grant. What are the agreements? Because the government at the time did not come out clearly to the people, and this was factored. And we referenced in the research, the document that we accessed, on the World Bank's website. For coming to the World Bank reaching out to us, they reached out to clarify a few things. First, they felt they do not want to be, there should not be an issue of conflict between them and the government in terms of the monies that they took and then they started spending. But I think they had a misunderstanding. They don't understand some part of the question, some part of the research text, which we already clarified, and then we have sent them. We've referred them back to the report for them to see, which they came back and they acknowledged that was it, because they were concerned that there's a part of the report that talks about the IMF 47.2 million that was supposed to be a grant, a loan, and the government of the Gambia, through the Ministry of Finance, went to the to the central bank to withdraw part of the money without going through the parliament approval, because they did not. And then when he went to the ministry, the parliament, you can hear him saying that this has been the norm in the Gambia, so that's why they not go to parliament. So this was something that they nixed, but we clarified, because that was supposed to go through parliament approval. They did not. Government did not do that.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say, Taslima, that was a good thing, but yeah, there is also the country coordinating mechanism called CCM, which is more or less representing Global Fund. I think Global Fund has also given the Minister of Health the opportunity to look at where they can tap funds to add to the country's response plan. So I think perhaps in the future, these are organizations or institutions that could be contacted so that they can react. Because I think the focus was more on the local government local fund, GLF. I think we mentioned about some external support from the World Bank, but there's also the Global Fund, which has also given the ministry a little bit of room to look at what they can move. So it would be great to also contact the country coordinating mechanism, even with the IMF.
Yeah, so the research, sorry, if I may comment, the research had limitations because it was not exhaustive at the time, considering we all know how a research work is. It needs time, also it needs resources and all that. So eventually, at some point, we had to limit ourselves because we do not have enough resources. But of course, also we wanted to we had limited time also to do so. So these were limitations that we encountered, and possibly, like you said, we could have reached out to some of the IMF and the World Bank, and of course also, like you suggested, other sources that we believe could have been also contacted, but we could not do that. But we will take note of that as a feedback.
Thank you very much. The conversation I just checked and I saw we are not doing very well with time. And the conversation is going very, very, very well. I just wanted to go through, we have, I think, one or two comments that I just wanted to read out to you before we come back. Then we have our final final words on this. We just have greetings from Martha and Usman Hyderaka thinks you need a haircut. Maybe you should do that after now. And Malik is watching. Tayyib, is happy that we're providing this platform to talk about issues that affect our life. Aliu Alman, the brother, is asking $10,000. He's just clarifying that instead of $10,000, it is 10 million US dollars, which is a grant from the World Bank. Thank you very much, Aliu. That's very good. And Wakar Ajarama, thank you very much. He's also just sharing how he thinks, we are doing, the right thing here. Guys, this is a conversation that I would not have really wanted to cut at this point, but we have gone beyond our mark, I believe. So I would just allow you all to come back with, if there's anything you thought you wanted to say that you don't have the opportunity, just share it. And if you have any final words or parting words, you feel free to share them. And then, yeah. Taslima, I'll start with you.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. I just want to say that just want to thank you all for the platform, the opportunity to share the little that we have. I would also just implore on you to possibly create time if you have not to go through the research. And then I just sent in the link to the video. You could also watch part of the video, and you get to see some of these things that I've said. And part of the rectification about the 10,000, it's actually 10 million. Yeah, that's actually it's even in the report it's 10 million dollars. Thank you so much. I don't have any much to say, but refer you possibly to read the report, and I'll be available at any time if you need to clarify one of the things.
Yeah, thank you, Taslima. I would watch the video. I actually read the report. I went through it, I believe, some time ago, it was more than a week ago, and I skimmed through it before today. you know. But I did go through it. I just need to watch the video, which I'm unable to do yet for now, but I will do that very soon. Usman.
Yes, thank you, Samba. Just to buttress on what Assam said about single sourcing and the procurement architecture in the Gambia. I understand at some point one of the donors were interested in financing an IT procurement system for the Gambia. I think this will be very necessary, especially during times like this, and so that, you know, to promote more transparency in procurement, and also, you know, as a means of reducing, if not completely stopping corruption in the public procurement system. Also, you know, we all know the effective public procurement practices, of course, you know, would mean that government is able to provide, you know, social and economic reforms. But also conversely, you know, malpractices in procurement would significantly, you know, increase corruption. It's a major source for corruption and financial loss. And during pandemics like this, that is not what you want to see. You want to ensure that every fund we receive or every fund we government has is used well to ensure that, you know, we are able to defeat COVID. But then once we have malpractices in the way funds are spent, obviously it will even undermine the success of government. And Hassan, mentioned that, is it Hassan or Ibrahim, that the minister announced, he read from one of the newspapers that there's going to be auditing. That is very important to audit, to know what has happened. Of course, monitoring and evaluation is very key in ensuring that, you know, corruption and, you know, is stopped. You know, when we talk about procurement now, the first thing that comes to mind is corruption. And of course, during pandemics like this, that is that is where, you know, most procurement corruption happen around the world, not only in the Gambia. Maybe Gambia has the least cases, in fact, of corruption with regards to pandemics also. Understand? And it's important to audit, of course, have good monitoring and evaluation mechanisms to ensure that, you know, to know whether things have been done rightly. And I think what Taslima and this organization has been doing is important, you know, in that aspect. Understand? The other thing is to, you know, build capacity. Understand? And so we have a centralized procurement system during COVID. You know, during pandemics. You know, now we are in COVID. We must ensure that all the remaining procurements are done through a centralized mechanism. Okay, and the other thing too is, you know, ensuring that we have, you know, developed, you know, policies, guidelines, standard operating procedures that would remain even for, you know, for whatsoever could happen in the future, especially for pandemics. Because when pandemics strike, you know, usually the public procurement law would allow you to do a single source, and that is the worst, you know, method in terms of procurement. Understand? You know, you have millions, you can do $500 million, $1 billion, you know, as a single source procurement. And, you know, the value for money element of it usually is not achieved because it gives you the opportunity to even pick. In our procurement system, maybe I can say in public sector, there's no institution that has an approved supplier list. Understand? So what happens is when there are pandemics, they'll just rush and cherry pick one of the companies they want to deal with and deal with them. So you see, that is where the problem comes. Now you are allowed to choose any company you want. It's not based on any rationale, you know, that you have to select based on previous performance. But when you have framework agreements with suppliers, there we can send them, you know, we can invite all of them to be part of it and at least eliminate that single source aspect of it. I think I only hope someday the Public Procurement Authority will look at means and government, of course, of ensuring that single source procurement is eliminated completely from our acts, you know, and from our procurement system. I think it is possible, and framework agreement can be done conveniently to acquire the goods and services, or, you know, with the infrastructure whatsoever is required during pandemics. And finally, thank you so much, Shamba, and it was good being here with Hassan, Ibrahim, and Taslima. I also learned a lot from them, and I hope this session was interesting to our followers. Thank you.
Don't forget, Haidara Karara thinks you should have your haircut, so maybe you should work on having Endel. But
yes, I will do that.
when pandemic strikes, corruption becomes a concern, and in times of pandemics, the least we should expect is the misuse of our resources. So working on having such frameworks as you mentioned should really be vital. We hope our procurement authority works on that. Mr. Balde.
Yes. Samba, thank you very much. I'll be very brief. I must say that this is one of the most interesting panel that we have constituted. To have experts like Usman and Taslima who did research to talk about this important issue, which I think we need another session to look at a lot of other issues with regard to how the COVID-19 funds have been spent or where they are going to be spent, because it's worth following before things get out of hand. Because already the Minister of Health has already blown the whistle, and anything that happens now is like he would have said, I said it before. So that's food for thought for us as well.
There are amount of food for thought. We are all going to follow Taslima in following the money, because I think we need to. We have very limited resources. We cannot allow just for them to, just be misused like that. Hassan.
Thank you very much. I'll join my colleagues to thank the moderator, Samba, the panelists, Usman, Ibrahima, and Taslima, and also to our wonderful listeners and viewers for their participation. Just to say that Gambia Participates did a very good job, because this is public accountability. These are public funds, and there should be transparency and accountability for taxpayers' funds. I consider them as whistleblowers, and I think this also reinforced the need to introduce freedom or access to freedom of information. I don't know how access to freedom of information. I think once we have this, the citizens can take it upon themselves, like Gambia Participates did, to follow this fund up to the last beneficiary. So I think also the government should definitely use this opportunity to seriously consider public sector reform. You see, all these things are not happening in ad hoc. This is a system that is so instituted that it allows all these things to happen. And like I said the other time, and I'll repeat it again, we inherited a bad system from Jammeh. I think, in my opinion, the system is still intact. Yes, there are some improvement in some areas, but I think we need to overhaul the whole system so that public officials can be accountable for public funds. I think part of this reform should also be introducing e-governance. Once we have an e-governance policy, all the issues surrounding procurement, like e-procurement that Usman has mentioned earlier, I'm a staunch advocate for that. I think would address most of this problem. We cannot eradicate corruption, but we can reduce it as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Eradicate, as you said, but we can reduce it. Like you said, we inherited bad system from the previous government. And even if you talk to people who were there when they were starting, they will tell you they also inherited a bad one from maybe the Jawara era. So what I think is, whether we accept to say this or not, but corruption or maladministration or misuse of funds have been to some extent, normalized in our public service. And we have this, COVID has given us an opportunity. This is an opportunity we have. Let's take it, Gambia. Thank you very much. I must say, I really enjoyed this panel. It has been good from start to end. I enjoyed listening and learning from all of you. Usually I take notes for questions I have. I'll ask, but I still have many of them that I couldn't ask because the contribution has been so great. I will save some of it another time. If we have you all back, that's Nima. I'll join all of them to say, keep up the work. We need people to be there for money for us. So keep it up. Let's follow it and let's get these things out. That's the only way we can hold these people accountable. We cannot just hope that their balances, their control mechanisms there will do the work for us. Let's get out there. Let's push them. Let's get this out for Gambia. Thank you very much once again. I will see you next week, inshallah. Thank you. Have a good day. Okay, guys.
Thank you. Okay.
Live. Just to be able to say bye. Mr. Vale, thank you very much, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Taslima. Thank you.
Okay, Jarama. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tasha.
I want you to understand. I'm very much